I love you. Thank you for joining us on another Zoom with Dr. David Anderson.
Hello.
Hello there. Yeah, you know what? You're in a much better mood. I hate to call it a mood than you were last week.
Well, it's all those things that were crawling around behind me on the screen last week are gone right now. So I feel safer. I don't feel threatened.
You feel okay, but you have a new staff member, so we haven't. I mean, we haven't even seen what he looks like. Could you hold up a picture of him or something?
I don't have a picture of him, and he's not in my office at the moment. But next time we tape, I'll take a moment to introduce you to him.
Yeah,
or all the viewers who want to see him, he's going to be preaching on Sunday, November the 14th in the morning service. They can hear him preach.
So your website is, do you have on the screen where they can get your streaming?
It's at fbcsarasota.com. That's our website. F for faith, B, Baptist, C, church, fbcsarasota.com. And you can go on the website and you can learn about our church and watch any of the sermons, any of the Bible studies on Wednesday night. They're all up there archived.
David, show me your ancestors.
Oh, okay. This is the headdress that I'll wear again someday on air, but this right here is my grandfather. That's Hampton Anderson Sr. That's a Bible in his hand. He was a Methodist preacher. Came to know Christ after he had been divorced, actually. So my dad was raised as a Christian Scientist by his mother. This is my father. When my granddad passed away, he handed the headdress down to my dad. This is me. And my dad gave the headdress to me when he turned 65. And David, that's my son. I've given the headdress to him. I still have it in my possession, but I gave it to him in a ceremony so that we could have that documented, because these are real eagle feathers. And
who made that headdress? Is it like 100 years old?
The feathers are over 100 years old. The headdress itself is now, from the 40s to, it's about 80 years old. And it was made by the Pawnee tribe. They collected the eagle feathers from tribal members to put into a double trained full headdress for my grandfather to honor him for his years of preaching the gospel to Native Americans. My granddad started 42 churches for Native Americans. He was a church planter.
So you have a great past, ancestors.
Yes, and he was your typical quiet Indian. As I was a grandson with him, I don't remember him saying all that much to me. We would be in his presence. He was always very stoic-like,
very intelligent.
He spoke 5 different languages, all self-taught. Yeah, he was a very, very smart man. And my dad is very intelligent as well. But we weren't Christians then, so we didn't share in his faith.
We need to give props to your mom. She was very intelligent.
My dad said my mom is the smartest woman he's ever met. And he said she definitely was smarter than him.
I thought that was my wife.
Yeah. Well, fact, your wife is smart.
She is. When I at Trinity College, I asked the girls that stayed with her, they had a dorm, and I said, before I ever dated her, I said, I want to ask you a question. Is Sharon smart? And they said, she is really smart. And so that just settled everything. She had the looks, she had the tan, she had the teeth, she had the height, she had
the teeth. That sounds like something from the Book of Solomon. She had all her teeth.
And she was smart, because if they would have said she's the dumbest thing I've ever been around, I go, okay, that kind of takes that out of the picture.
Well, Dad, I got to say, I think of all the people I know, you're the only one who would ever bring up teeth in the description of his wife. She has teeth. I really like teeth.
Well, that's the first thing my dad told me. He said, she's got the kind of teeth you like. So then I started looking for her. So you've got a really a Oxford mentality background.
I come from an intelligent family, yeah, and my brother definitely demonstrates it, and well, so does my sister for that
Well, now
matter.
he got his medical degree under the umbrella of the Indian tribe, right?
And my sister got her nursing degrees under the umbrella of the tribe. And my sister worked for the Indian Health Service and was right under the Surgeon General. She has retired now. She was the chief nurse for the entire Indian Health Service, which is part of the public health service.
She
And
is
then
so smart too.
my brother became a doctor of osteopathy.
Now, your mom, she was in the armed forces.
Yeah, she was in the Air Force, and she was a aeronautical engineer.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, she was quite intelligent, but a lot of fun too.
And
And she had her teeth.
we'll accept that. What is today's beginning of
Today we're in Mark chapter 5, and it's the story that follows Christ calming the storm. So it begins right with them landing on the other side of the Sea of Galilee.
Wow.
Verse 1 of Mark 5. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains. And the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. This is a nightmare picture. That's the story introduction of a character that could be featured in any horror movie.
Yeah.
A man who lives out in the teams and screams out at night and cuts themselves and can break apart chains and break shackles because he's demon possessed.
It sounds like he was on methamphetamine.
Yeah, today that would be or back in the day, a PCP.
Yeah.
Because they seem to have supernatural strength when they took it. The human body is, when it's empowered by other forces and the release of certain chemicals, can have Herculean strength. You know, the dump of adrenaline can give you momentary super strength, but afterwards you're exhausted and your adrenal glands have to replenish. But for a demon-possessed person, one of the hallmarks is a supernatural strength.
Well, now Samson was not demon possessed, right?
No, because
but he was strong all the time.
Yeah, well, strong when he had to be. We don't know if he walked around strong all the time, but when he needed to perform a task, he was always able to do it at that moment. But that was through the gifting of God.
Yeah.
God had granted that to him. So this is one of the 6 specific instances of Jesus casting out a demon. Mark records Christ casting out a whole lot of demons, and he says it in general, like the multitudes came and he cast out demons. But
so in this area of the country, was that prominent?
It was prominent all over the world, more than likely. We only have the account in the Bible of the Middle East, but paganism was rampant. The worship of Yahweh was a small minority of the world. So you have, whether it's in the jungles of Africa or the jungles of Central America and South America.
Or Haiti has a lot of demons.
Yeah, or Asia, or whatever, wherever there was paganism, there was the worship of spirits, which would have set people up for demon possession. So it was common, but this is one of the 6 times that a specific example is given of Jesus casting out a demon. And although the Gospels include other references of him casting out demons throughout his preaching ministry, only 6 specific stories are told, and this is probably the most memorable. Now, in addition to this instance, Mark includes 3 other exorcisms in his Gospel. So Mark records 4 of the 6 specific demon possession casting out of demons in his scripture. The man in the synagogue, the daughter of the Greek woman, and a boy who was deaf and mute, and then this maniac of Gadara. He's called the maniac or the demoniac of Gadara. So this man lived in the tombs. He could not be bound with chains. He had a demon-possessed companion, Matthew 8 says. Matthew 8 says he had a buddy that was with him. Mark emphasizes only this one who must have been the leader of the two, the alpha male demon-possessed man. But Matthew adds the second feature that there were two of these guys. They were fiercely aggressive. Matthew 8 tells us they were aggressive and they attacked people, and they wore no clothes. That's what Luke tells us. They were naked. So they were naked, violent, supernaturally powered, angry, wailed at night. And these are the people, and they were emotionally tormented. That's why they're crying out. These are the people who meet Jesus as he comes off the boat. So verse 6 tells us how it happens. When he saw Jesus, when this demon-possessed man saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him. And we'll get to that in a moment.
Wow.
And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." For he said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." So this demon, and maybe even his companion, they both may have run up. Mark just focuses on this one. They did not attack Jesus. They attacked everybody else. Whoever came by that cemetery, they didn't attack Jesus. They came and they fell down in front of him, acknowledging who he is, which is the root of what worship is. They're not surrendering to him. They are acknowledging they are powerless before him. And the demons are acknowledging you are the Son of God. And their only interest is don't torment us.
So
Don't
Jesus,
torture us.
so Jesus had an aura around him or about him, right?
Well, he had something that other spirit beings could see. You know, children were very comfortable with Jesus, and I think there was certainly a charisma about him, but there was another ingredient that only demons and heavenly angels could see the divinity in him. That was cloaked from mankind. But the demons could see it, and they could see it afar off. Now, whether or not they felt it in their bones or they physically saw it, but the idea is when he was so far away, you couldn't really see who he was. The demons knew who he was, and they ran at him in a preventative measure to prevent Jesus from tormenting them, because they knew they couldn't stop him if he wanted to torture them. They knew they could not stop him. And that's, you know, one of the interesting things about demons in the occult world. Oftentimes they acknowledge the power in Jesus far more than the average Christian does. You know, a demon knows you cannot defy God and get away with it.
You know, the people standing around seeing this happen, they must have thought Jesus is going to be attacked and torn apart.
Oh, I imagine when those who were there from the community, from Gadara, who saw these two men running at Jesus, they would have feared. The disciples wouldn't have known who he was. They wouldn't have known why the guys were running, but they may have been running and screaming because they wailed a lot all night long. So, but I'm sure it was dramatic. But when they got to Christ, they just fell down, which is what the pictorial reference of worship is to fall down and do obeisance. So they just bowed down before Christ, not honoring him as Savior, but acknowledging that they are powerless before him. And that's what they were saying. So in verse 9, excuse me, then he asked him, "What is your name?" Jesus asked the demon-possessed man. And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion." And that word name might be better, my title or my designation. "For we are many." Also, he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now, and this is a little glimpse of the spiritual warfare that is engaging all around us all of the time, that maybe some believers have had the, if you want to call it privilege or opportunity to see or be aware of. Most of us live in complete oblivion to the spiritual warfare taking place. I think Frank Peretti's books, which were novels from his imagination, but it probably pretty accurately describes what the spiritual warfare is like. That this collection of demons, legion, which meant in Roman terminology, possibly thousands, because a Roman legion wasn't just 1,000 people. It could be into the multiple thousands. So this collection of demons inside one person was a legion of demons who still could not stand up to the one God, to Christ, even in human form. They could not stand before him. So this man is being tormented by a group. Now, Christ did not ask him his name because Christ didn't know his name.
Well, if God wanted to, he could destroy every demon at that time that was existing, right?
Yes, he
I mean, he could just go, "You're done."
Christ, God, because some of the demons right now are chained in the bottomless pit. We learn in the book of Jude, because of what they did in some way related to the flood. They violated something, and there's a debate about what they did, but they're in the bottomless pit right now, chained forever. God could have chained all the demons if he wanted to. He could take them all right now and throw them into the bottomless pit and then throw them into the lake of fire. He's going to someday, the book of Revelation tells us, but only after his plan is unfolded. So the demons are all part of this incredible story that's unfolding in front of us, that's written to bring honor and glory to God, because God knows everything. So Jesus, he wasn't saying, "Hey, what's your name? What do I call you?" He's wanting the demon to identify himself so that everyone else knows what Christ is dealing with.
Wow.
He wants the audience there to know, I am about to address a legion of demons. So he wants what he's about to do to be fully known, not because of his pride, but to reveal to this other culture, which is predominantly not Jewish and certainly not Christian, of his supremacy as the Son of God. And so he's about to cast out a horde of demons that would be stronger than an entire legion of Romans coming in to take over your city. So verse 11, now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, send us to the swine, that we may enter them. And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. And then in parentheses, it says there were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. In a couple of sermons I've heard over the years, I've heard preachers say that these people shouldn't have been herding swine in the first place. They were not right with God. Well, these weren't Jews. So this was no violation. These were Gentiles.
And this was their livelihood, right?
It was their livelihood. Swine was totally acceptable in that culture. This wasn't a Jewish community, so there was no violation of that. But it were unclean animals to the Jewish mindset. And so when they know the story that the demons, they'll go and possess these 2,000 swine. Now, Jesus could have sent them straight to the bottomless pit. And they knew that. So they come up with this idea. Can you put us in the swine? Now, we don't understand the economics of that or the judicial decision of that. Like, why couldn't Christ just cast them out and then leave? Why do they have to go into something else? We don't quite understand that. And I would be leery of anybody who does. You know, it's not part of the Christian call to understand the mechanics of the occult world. Christians who get fascinated by the powers of the occult world are just teetering on the edge of being seduced inward into it. It's far better to stay away from it altogether, be aware of their mechanisms so that we know how they attack us. But I'd be leery of becoming an expert in the hierarchies and the identities and the allegiances of the demon hordes. It's not a safe place of study. And because it's real. And demons are incredibly deceitful. They can present themselves as an angel of light.
Now, we don't have a lot of casting out of demons in America, do we?
No, that doesn't mean that it's not happening or that it should not happen. But the demon activity is more cloaked, and it's demon possession in the ancient times was a way of frightening the people into obedience to the occult power, the demon power. Americans aren't going to get frightened into that, so it's more obtuse, or it's more covert. Demonic activity is just as active or just as prevalent in America as it was in the ancient world, but it's behind the scenes.
Yeah.
One of the dangerous things is now we see in our culture, in the entertainment industry, and music and movies and novels, Satanism is being glorified, and it's being accepted, and it's being seen as being socially acceptable to foster a demonic spirit or to have demonic symbols on your body. That's new to American culture. So who knows what that's going to introduce? It's possible we could begin to see an outbreak of open demonic activity, but more.
I think I know where most of it is. This is just my idea. It's the leadership in the Democrats in Washington, D.C. I think that's where it's now the headquarters.
Well, I would agree if you put the word politics there, because I've got to say there's a number of Republicans too who have no allegiance to truth or the gospel or to God. It's about money and power, and many and every political party. But in politics in general, that is about controlling the people to keep the political ruling class in power.
Yeah.
But demonism or demonic activity in America has probably been best evidenced in the abortion industry.
Wow.
Where we're having over 1 million babies basically sacrificed every year to the god Moloch. We are sacrificing our children to the god of convenience and pleasure, which is a hidden face of the occult. And that's my fear, that have we gone so far now since 1973 that we are irretrievable? Nothing's beyond God's grace.
They're
But
always
unless we break and stop that, I cannot help but think judgment is coming.
they're constantly trying to find out and tagging everybody with being a racist. I would think the abortion industry is the most racist because it has been proven how many black babies, millions, have been aborted. I mean, it's a Holocaust.
In America, yes. In other countries, it's more sexist because it's girls who are being aborted.
Yeah, like China.
Yeah. So it's the face of a totally disregard for the sanctity of human life. Abortion reflects the hatred that Satan has for God's creation. The one life form that was made in the image of God, that's the one that we're aborting. Yet we have laws to protect baby turtles and baby everything else, but we don't have a law to protect babies in the womb.
And can you imagine?
That shows you how twisted we've become.
Can you imagine our tax dollars, $500 million goes to Planned Parenthood to continue that Holocaust?
Right. And the sad thing is, the church, we can't point too many fingers because we remained silent for so many years when that was even being debated in the 60s. To the church, that was a political issue that we set back and let that debate take place. And we have reaped the whirlwind ever since.
And you've been arrested 9 times.
Yes, it's been a while. I haven't been arrested since 1990.
Yeah. But in Buffalo, New York, you enjoyed being arrested. I don't know why.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't enjoy it. It's just something I had to endure to do what I felt, just like you did, God wanted me to do at that time.
Yeah.
But
I was arrested in Tampa.
I became convinced that the times had changed. There was a better mechanism for dealing with abortion. So let's get to verse 14 before the time runs away. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. So Jesus is still out there. The 2 demon-possessed people have now been freed. They're still out there. But the shepherds, or not the shepherds, the swine herders, they ran into the city to tell everybody what happened. And they went out to see what it was that happened, the people from the community. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, who they knew very well. They all knew about this guy, sitting and clothed and in his right mind. Interesting. Right after his conversion, even his physical appearance changes. He becomes modest. He puts on clothes and he can sit and talk. And they were afraid. Now, this is a calm, quiet, conversational man that now strikes fear in them, but it's because they knew what he was. And they probably wondered, is this just a show? Is he now going to release himself and attack us? And those who saw it told them how it happened to him who had been demon possessed and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him, Jesus, to depart from their region. So that story of what Christ did spread so quickly, and the evidence was so undeniable, and the implications were so powerful of what it meant to them and their community. Their request was not, Jesus, stay and teach us or show us who you are. It was, please get out of here.
About 3 minutes to wrap this up.
And many people delay believing in Christ because they're afraid of the profound implications of what it means to believe in Christ. I don't want to give up my sex life. I don't want to give up my drinking life. I don't want to give up my drugs. I don't want to give up my greed. So I don't want to lose all that stuff. So I don't come to Jesus. That's a very common human reaction when presented with the reality of Christ. Verse 18. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you. And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis. And Decapolis is the 10 cities that make up that region, all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So the delivered man wanted to be with the deliverer, but the deliverer had an assignment for him, and it was go tell.
Was he now saved? I mean, he was a born again believer.
To whatever degree you could before Christ's death, he was a believer in the Messiah.
Yes.
He was
a follower of Jesus.
He was a follower of Christ. To whatever knowledge he had, all he knew was, I know what I was, I know I got changed, and he's the one who did it. So whatever he wants, that's what I'll do. And he gladly went and shared the message. And that, that's a wonderful testimony and example for you and me, that if we have received the grace of God, we have a moral, spiritual obligation and opportunity to go and tell people what great things the Lord has done for us. It doesn't matter if your story is not spectacular. The great thing he's done for you is saved you from hell and given you a home in heaven, forgiven your sins, imparted his spirit into your spirit, awakened your dead spirit. That right there is enough to tell everybody what great things God has done for you, even if your testimony is not spectacular.
Amen. I heard a guy, Dave, the other day say his return, Christ's return, is so near that he said, if you're in a restaurant, and this guy was the type that would do it, stand up on a chair and tell them, if you're not born again, trusting Christ as Savior, you're going to go to hell. You need to do it now.
Yeah.
That's the kind of message we have.